In honor of Summer Games Done Quick, we're announcing a new initiative. It's called Games Done Slow. It never actually ends. Welcome to Triple Click, where we bring the games to you. This week, we are answering some of your burning questions on everything from private servers and MMOs to Switch 1 versus Switch 2, and where does Mario go when he dies? I'm Jason Schreier.
I'm Kirk Hamilton.
And I'm Maddy Myers.
And we are one day away from Triple Click Live, which is very exciting.
Sure is exciting. Oh, man. I'm excited. I know that much.
It's going to be a fun one. So for those of you who have missed us talking about this for the last little while, we will be performing a live show in Portland. This is going to be a little different than our previous live shows because we've got a whole musical extravaganza and game shows and all sorts of fun stuff planned.
Yeah.
For people who are not in Portland this Friday night, July 11th, we will be putting, so the show is going to be like roughly 2 hours, maybe a little longer. We're going to put the first half as our main episode for next week's show. So you will get to hear that no matter where you are. And then the second half of the live show, really the complete live show, will be in the bonus feed for Max Fun subscribers. So if you're not a subscriber, you will get the kind of the core, the
core
main topic and one more things in the live show. Mm-hmm. And if you are a subscriber, you'll get everything else. And speaking of subscribers, how do you become a subscriber?
Yeah,
what is a
that?
subscriber?
What's
what
that?
does that mean? You may wonder. We are a listener-supported podcast, which means that we rely on all of you fine folks out there to make the show possible. And to become a subscriber and support us, you can go to MaximumFun.org/join. You will get bonus episodes from us every month, including the live show I just mentioned. That'll be a fun one. And lots of other stuff. We just talked about Andor Season 2 in a bonus episode that just ran. That was a very fun conversation. And this year we've talked about other stuff, games like Blueprints and a whole bunch of other stuff. So become a member. Go to MaximumFun.org/join today. All right. So let's get into this week's episode, shall we?
Yeah.
This week, we are opening up the listener mailbag and taking some questions from all you fine folks. It's time for burning questions.
Let's go.
Kirk, one of these days, we've been doing this show for like 5 years and we still don't have a sound effect for burning questions. I feel like we need like
Should be like a crackling fire, maybe?
Yeah.
Like, because the bag's on fire, folks.
I have played fire sound effects at times. Fire doesn't really cut.
Yeah.
I've played the that famous fireball sound effect. It's everyone will know it because it's in movie trailers in the 90s. It's in every movie trailer. It goes, and it's also in that video game Magic Carpet. I've talked about this before. At one point, I even wrote an electric guitar. It was like burning questions or something, like it was like a power chord. But I just never remember to go back and use them, or I haven't felt fully satisfied with any one sound. But one of these days, we'll have a little jingle for burning questions.
One of these days, I'm excited. Just a reminder, if you want to submit a question, you can reach us at tripleclick@maximumfun.org. And just make sure to keep your questions nice and short, nice and pithy, and also interesting. Make them interesting. If they're not interesting, we probably won't read them. All right, we got some fun ones to get through today. Maddy, why don't you kick us off with this one from Zach?
Sure. So Zach writes, something that has really been bugging me far more than it probably should about the announcement of Outer Worlds 2 is the disconnect between the game's anti-capitalist tone and its price outside of an Xbox Game Pass subscription. Seeing and hearing all the anti-capitalist messaging in the trailer only for it to be followed by an exorbitant purchase price to, quote, own the game, unless you subscribe to Game Pass, yay, no more ownership, really bummed me out. But it got me thinking, can a game from a major studio like Obsidian even deliver genuine anti-capitalist criticism if its parent company actively undercuts that message with how it publishes and prices the game? Does that undermine the work of the writers, since Microsoft is essentially commodifying anti-capitalist dissent? Doesn't this make Outer Worlds 2 part of the problem it's trying to satirize? Just starting off with an easy one here, I think.
Interesting.
Microsoft, huh? What a company.
Yep. Another week at Microsoft.
Well, let me pose this to you guys. I'm not an expert on anti-capitalism literature, discourse, or what the alternatives would be, or the model of socialism, or whatever else. But I think that most for all of human society, or for most of the majority of the human's existence, we've exchanged goods and services for some sort of currency. It doesn't strike me as like not anti-capitalist to charge a certain amount of money, even if it's higher than usual. Like how, I guess I'm curious as to what the disconnect is there, just because the price is raising, if that necessarily is like a pro-capitalist message. To me, that just speaks to inflation, which may be a part, an aspect of capitalism, but that's also an aspect of any monetary system. So I guess I'm a little confused by the premise of this.
Right. So let's maybe expand the premise to one that I at least find a little bit more relevant, which is, can a game published by Microsoft, the ultimate, or one of the ultimate megacorps, this shining example of the follies of capitalism that has caused so much harm and damage, that funds weapons of war, that is engaged in so much anti-competitive behavior, that is pouring billions of dollars into artificial intelligence in this ruinous waste, can they put forth a game? Can they publish and fund a game that is anti-capitalist in its message? I feel like that's maybe a more relevant question.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And also, can you, as a developer who works at a company that's been acquired by a corporation like Microsoft, still make art that you believe in? I think that's something that the individual developers probably ask themselves, especially if they're working on a game that is satirizing big corporations, which Outer Worlds 2 very much is. It's a big part of the game.
I mean, if anything, that hits the message harder, I would say. It feels like if you can get away with working for a massive corporation while at the same time criticizing the existence of those corporations without getting fired for it, then power.
Yeah, that tends to be my inclination. It's like, do what you can get away with, right?
I think, yeah, you can make art under any circumstances. And certainly we're all members of a society that we also make art criticizing, and that's part of how art works. So I do think that it's totally valid. Now, whether Zach or another person can get over that tension is another question. I think if you look at this and just think, I just can't square this circle, the fact that Microsoft is selling me this game that's presenting this satirical view of corporate life, to me, it just feels off. I'm just not into it. I totally understand if someone feels that way.
Yeah, and journalism is the same way, right? Like, I work for Bloomberg, a massive corporation, and a lot of people who work for Bloomberg News are welcome to criticize capitalism. And it's, well, technically Bloomberg News' mission is to chronicle capitalism, which I think is a really interesting one, because it allows you to explore capitalism from all these different directions. And nobody is told, like, hey, you can't write this because the corporate overlords will disagree or something like that. At least as far in my personal experience, that's not something I've run into, or like getting pressure or anything like that. Your point about working within the confines of the system that we are have to live in, I think, is an apt one. That said, I mean, I've always been a little bit skeptical of boycotts in general, but I've always said, I think the three of us have always agreed on this show, whenever we talk about like boycotts and companies' terrible practices, like when we were talking about Activision Blizzard back when that lawsuit hit a few years ago, I think as a personal customer, you have to make your own ethical decisions of what you want to support, what you don't. Certainly, I've seen a lot of calls for like canceling Game Pass in the wake of these massive Xbox layoffs last week. People feeling like, hey, what am I supporting here? Just
fair question.
Heartbreak and devastation and people losing their jobs. So if you're coming at this and you're like, man, something doesn't sit right with me buying this game and supporting Microsoft, even while this game is trying to be anti-capitalist, then I mean, I think that's a perfectly reasonable stance to take as a person.
Yeah, it is. I also always have to think about it in terms of being a person who's been getting Game Pass for free for an extremely long time. I may not work at Polygon anymore, but Microsoft sent us Game Pass codes and mine's still working. Like, I haven't had to pay for Game Pass for years and years at this point. And so as a critic, I always, and all three of us always, have to try to put ourselves in the position of imagining what it would be like if we weren't getting games for free, which we do all the time on this show. Like, this is an ethical quandary that we just haven't had to face for years, or at least I know I haven't. And instead I get to be like, I'll criticize Hogwarts Legacy, for example, without having had to buy it or whatever because, you know, my workplace paid for it or I got a code or whatever it is. And that puts me in this position of like ivory tower critical thinking where I get to be like, I'm now weighing in from this neutral position. But our listeners aren't in that position. And so I'm sympathetic to Zach here for at least being in the place of thinking, well, should I buy a game like this, thereby supporting the developers who are making a game with that maybe has messages that it sounds like Zach might agree with or think are interesting or compelling in some way? But also, by supporting it, I'm also supporting the larger corporate structure behind them that is making decisions all the time that I don't agree with. And I don't think that question has an easy answer because, like, where does the money go? It goes to both places, right?
Yeah, and I mean, Zach didn't really mention boycotts or buying the game in his question, just for what it's worth. He's sort of just asking broadly, does this undermine the artistic message of the game? His final question is, doesn't this make Outer Worlds 2 a part of the problem it's trying to satirize? And I think that in a very tangible way it does, and yet at the same time, sometimes that kind of friction is inevitable. And so it's just something you have to kind of consider when you're playing the game. It's very interesting and very complicated. It's like part of this modern life.
Yeah. Although I do think the premise here, I said this earlier, but I do think the premise of like a game being inherently more capitalist because it raised its price $10, I do think that's kind of a flawed argument. And I think the question of game prices getting hiked, that's another conversation topic that we should get into down the road. But like that is not, and the question of how sustainable that is, that's a whole nother can of worms. But like that is not something that is inherently like a capitalistic move. It's just kind of the nature of how currency functions. And even if we were in like a
right, all capitalist satire doesn't have to be free.
Yeah.
right. Well, and also and
tough
if we were in a socialist society, prices would also go up because inflation would not go away just because we were living under different like confines.
Yeah, I think I still had to purchase my own copy of the Communist Manifesto when I read it in college. So that was actually messed up.
Really makes you think, Maddy.
And I really shouldn't have had to buy it. It should have been free, I think. Mm-hmm. Oh, well.
It's really, whenever you're reading about history, it always blows my mind a little bit to be like, wow, 2,000 years ago in the Roman Empire, they were still using money. They were exchanging currency for goods and services, which I think is really interesting. Just how old a currency is as a system.
Yeah.
And I bet they had inflation back then, too. All right, I'm going to read this next question. This is from Chris. I was wondering what your thoughts are on private servers for MMOs or other live service games. Some view them as piracy, whereas others might consider them similar to mods, especially when it comes to game content not otherwise available. Most famously, the various World of Warcraft Classic iterations would probably not exist without private servers demonstrating unmet customer demand. What do you guys think? Have you ever played on a private server of an online game?
Oh, sure, I have.
Yeah, I guess I haven't since, the days of Counter-Strike, like very early 2000s, but not on a modern MMO where they're basically, they've spoofed the servers and are running it themselves in a violation of the terms of service. I have not actually done that. But I think this is a very interesting question.
Yeah, I've only done it in the context of games where the servers weren't readily available. So for a time, there were several Street Fighter games that just didn't have online servers. I've said in the past, I really like Third Strike. It's one of my favorite ones. And so for a time, fan servers were the only way you could play Third Strike online if you just wanted to compete online with people. And that's how I played it for a while. And it was very fun. And there's Reddit communities for fighting games like that just don't still have online servers. And typically, even Capcom is willing to just look the other way and pretend they don't see it. And they might not feel that way now because I know they've put out versions of Street Fighter that you can play online. I have my quibbles with some of those Capcom re-releases that we don't need to get into, but now that there are more official versions of a lot of those games, they might care. I haven't looked into that. But I think that for games where they're not otherwise available, even major developers are more likely to be like, I'm just going to pretend I don't see this because obviously it's just a reflection of people still liking a game that is fundamentally intended to be an online game and was shipped as one and now just isn't anymore because it's not online anymore.
Yeah, I've been doing this intellectual exercise where I imagine if, say, a friend of mine who I used to play Destiny with found a way to host a private server that just had a version of Destiny from, maybe, I don't know, 1 year after Destiny 1 came out.
One with Peter Dinklage in it.
Right, the sort of golden era when Jason and I were total sickos playing all the time. And they were just hosting that on their own little server and paying the server fees. And then just 6 of us could get on there and just play the Vault of Glass and like do Destiny strikes together. And it wasn't like a whole big thing.
Why are we not doing this?
So I don't know if this would be possible or not, but just to use Destiny because that's the MMO that I played, that would be really cool. And I know that would be a violation of copyright, and I'm sure Bungie would not be happy about it. But at the same time, if it's just 6 people hosting it, I think that kind of thing is really cool. It'd be nice if that were more possible, or even if companies could make it possible for people to do that through their own server. I know that would kind of like they would fracture the player base, and I'm sure there are a lot of problems with offering that to people. But people do want to go back and they want to have some control over which version of the game they're playing. World of Warcraft Classic is a great example, but I'm sure it's true of a lot of MMOs, even though there doesn't seem to be currently a workable way to offer it. It still would be neat.
Yeah, it reminds me of emulation. That's the parallel that I would make, where it's like, if you want to play something that there is no way to purchase other than like buying a $500 disc on eBay where the money doesn't go to the developers anyway, then there's nothing unethical about downloading a ROM and playing it on an emulator, at least in my view. And with this, it's the same way, where I feel like if you have a private server to circumvent like the subscription cost of an MMO or the microtransactions or whatever, you want to be able to get all the outfits on your private server without paying. That strikes me as a little bit less kosher than just creating a private server for something that is not available to play anyway, which doesn't really seem like a problem to me. And yes, in World of Warcraft's case, the existence of Nostalrius and other servers that like allowed people to play the vanilla World of Warcraft even years after it had like evolved in all sorts of different ways and gotten expanded, that directly led to Blizzard asking them to shut down and then revealing its own version, World of Warcraft Classic. So these private servers not only can allow people to play games in a way that they want to play if they're unavailable, can also force these companies' hands and lead to cool stuff. So that also seems like a win for me. And I think even though Blizzard did ask Nostalrius to go, did try to take it down, I think that it ultimately helped create World of Warcraft Classic, which is a very successful product. So it's kind of a win-win.
Yeah.
I wonder if the people who were part of that project feel kind of bittersweet about it, though, just being asked by Blizzard to take it down, and whether there's any bad blood there. I mean, I'm not part of that community, so I don't know, but I could imagine that being the case if they had quibbles with the way the Classic came out in comparison.
Yeah, I think they had some conversations with Blizzard. Like Blizzard brought them onto campus and talked to them. I'm not sure how involved they were ultimately with the actual development of World of Warcraft Classic, but I don't think it was like we're gonna just send you, or we're gonna throw our lawyers at you and never talk to you.
Yeah, there's like an unclassy way to do it, where it's like we're just gonna release Classic, never speak to you, and then hit you with a takedown notice.
Yeah,
they didn't do that.
I don't think they did it quite that way.
That's good, at least.
Kirk, you want to read the next question?
Sure. This comes from Eleanor, who writes, Jason, I heard in the most recent Burning Questions that you were the one who reads all these emails, which is convenient because this question is for you. So Jason has already had some time to think about this question because he does go through our inbox for these Burning Questions episodes. Eleanor writes, I am a longtime listener since episode 1 of Triple Click, and I am also an avid listener of a few other Maximum Fun podcasts. I was going through some old episodes of one of these shows, Story Break, when I heard an old Triple Click promo. In the promo, the 3 of you asked enticing questions to the potential listening audience. Most of these you've answered on the show, but one lingers. Jason, you asked, what happens to Mario when he dies? You asked if I wanted to know that 4 years ago, and the answer is yes, I want to know. Jason, what happens to Mario when he dies?
You know, I've been thinking about this. It does feel like we asked that question. It feels like the listeners deserve an answer, and we should finally address it. So I've done a lot of reporting, I've done a lot of research, and I've actually found out the answer, which is now. But if he doesn't go, And Bowser's butt is... All right, Maddy, you want to take this next question?
Sure. This one's from Rebecca, who asks, Dear Triple Click, listening to your latest episode about the Switch 2, I thought y'all would be perfect to answer my family's quandary. We never had a Switch. We have 3 kids, 12, 10, and 7, who have gotten much more into PC games in the last couple years. We own 5 copies of Stardew Valley, so we can play a co-op game together. But we're all sitting in different rooms doing so. This year, we've agreed that instead of getting lots of presents, we'll blow our whole Christmas gift budget on a Switch or Switch 2. The problem is, which one? We can make the money work for the Switch 2. We'll ask grandparents to send money for games. But obviously, if we get a Switch 1, we'll be able to afford a lot more. Obviously, we'll have to shell out for extra controllers, too. Do you have any insight on this at all? What factors am I missing in this decision? This is tough. There's pros, there's cons.
I think there's only one answer, which is you got to get the Switch 2. Because if you get the Switch 2, you're future-proofing. Because when your kids inevitably come to you next year and they're like, this new Mario game, this new Zelda game, whatever it is, looks amazing. Can we get it? You don't have to be like, oh, sorry, we only have a Switch 1. You can't get it. So the Switch 2, you can play all the old Switch 1 games. And in fact, you can probably get some of those at a discount, which will help in terms of pricing for the holiday. But you don't have to worry that next year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you will have to buy a new console to play the latest Nintendo games. And your kids are going to be talking about that stuff at school with their friends. They're going to be like, hey, like this new game just got announced. It looks super cool. Oh, no, we can't play it because we only have a Switch 1. So I feel like it's worth the investment this holiday.
Yeah, that seems like good advice. This is a tough one. I mean, it is a really tricky and specific situation. Thinking it through and going along with that recommendation, yeah, like they can get controllers if they need more controllers. You can get non-first party controllers for a lot less money than the Switch 2 controllers cost, which is also probably just a good idea if you have kids. You don't need the most cutting edge thing. You just need something that works because it might get broken at some point anyways. And yeah, like there are older Switch 1 games that are cheaper or kind of discounted, so you can kind of pick those up. Your copy of Stardew Valley will still work on Switch 2. So that makes sense to me as advice, yeah.
Yeah, I think you two are correct in part because of just the aging of the console. Like the Switch 1 is really showing its age. The Switch 2, we compared it to a new phone, which is something I've thought about a lot as I've continued to play it and how apt that comparison feels to me. And that it is like my Switch just feels a lot better and faster to play now because it's the new phone I got. But I will say that because Switch 1 controllers still work, maybe that's a money-saving maneuver that you could play here, especially if you're getting used or refurbished ones. Obviously, you don't want to deal with the Joy-Con drift situation. I'm talking pro controllers. Those still work on the Switch 2. So that seems like maybe a way to get all those additional controllers and take advantage of the backwards compatibility of the first Switch and just save some money so you can spend as much as you want on the games, which is the most important thing here. And part of why I thought this was a good question, because you want enough games that the whole family can participate and not feel like, okay, we got one game and now what are we supposed to do?
Yeah,
that sounds like the plan.
That's very good advice. And yeah, I mean, the other thing to consider is that if you buy a Switch 1, you will probably want to upgrade at some point in the future, even if it's 2-3 years from now, because the Switch 1 just won't be getting new games on it, and you might get sick of playing like back catalog stuff. So that's $300 for the Switch 1, and then another $450 for the Switch 2 in the future. So you are saving yourself money too by future proofing at this.
You're
point.
right. You're actually saving money by buying the Switch 2. That's so true. Great point.
It's good that they have until Christmas because you can chew on this advice and sort of game it out and figure out whether it would work or not.
And which controllers to get. Yeah,
it's the kind of decision that you'd want to make over time, and you have some time.
Yeah, and I think the advice would be much different if it was like, should I upgrade from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2? That's a very different question than like, I'm buying this for the first time, in which case it's like you would, if you're buying a new phone, you probably want one that's either like 1 to 2 years old or like the most modern one. You don't want to buy a new iPhone from 7 years ago if you're getting a new phone this holiday. So that's the way to go. All right, next question. I'll read this one. This is from Zach. Zach says, I, like many others, have become completely enraptured with blueprints. One element that I haven't heard talked about quite as much is the music of the game. It may not be flashy, but it sets the perfect moody tone for the setting as you discover new clues and uncover the broader implications of the lore hidden within the estate. My only complaint is that the music doesn't play enough. Sometimes it can feel like you go an entire run without any music outside of the starting stinger. Major shout out to the group who composed it, Trig and Gusset, for creating a soundtrack that I am vigilantly on the lookout for a vinyl pressing of. So Zach doesn't have a question, but Kirk, as our resident Strong Songs host and music expert, do you want to talk a little bit about the music of Blueprints and maybe why it's not discussed enough and what makes it cool?
Yeah, I have discussed it on the show and have mentioned it. Trig and Gusset are a jazz duo who recorded a really killer soundtrack for this game. And it's come up on, I think, on our Beans cast a few different times. I'll talk about it and I'll play it, all that beautiful bass clarinet music. I mostly wanted to point Zach to the most recent episode of Strong Songs, which came out after he probably sent in this email, is a mailbag where someone wrote in to ask about Simon's theme, which is the piece of music that plays whenever you go into the music room. It's this collection of 3 chords. It's really beautiful. And I actually went into a whole big explanation of it and talked all about, how the harmony works. And it's a Trig, I believe, is the keyboard player in that group playing it. So if you want to hear a kind of in-depth section of a Q&A of Strong Songs about the music, you can go check that out and we'll link it in the show notes. And I wanted to say, just to Zach's point that he thinks the music doesn't play enough, I don't think I can agree with that. One thing that I really like about Blueprints is how infrequently the music plays, because when it does play, it counts for so much, especially when those really big moments happen. A cinematic is playing and the bass clarinet really comes in and it gets so dramatic. I don't know. There's so much space in this game. It's such an unusually minimalist soundtrack. I think that's what makes it special. And if it played all the time, it would maybe lose a little bit of that, as much as I do love hearing it. So I just wanted to respond to that point as well.
It leaves you wanting more.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree 100%. And like the moments of like getting to the antechamber, or like that moment when you first discover a certain room underground across the water.
Or even just like the first time you see the credits roll, even if you don't understand the import of it, the first time you get to room 46, there's a great song that plays under the monologue, and it's beautiful, and it adds a lot to that entire discovery. I mean, every time there's a big song moment, it's also a big emotional moment in that game, and it helps them land way more.
And the way that the certain rooms have music, the Secret Garden, there's a piece of music that always plays. Simon's theme always plays when you go into the music room. It develops this kind of mimetic quality that video games are very good at, where, like a Persona game, if you picture a Persona game, every single time you're hanging out, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da starts playing, and you're like, here we are, we're hanging out in Persona. You hear that, 120 times over the course of a game or something. It just builds this kind of relationship into your brain. Blueprints does the same thing, and I think if the music played more often, they would probably dilute each piece a little bit, and they wouldn't be as effective.
All right, next question, Kirk. Take us away.
This comes from Caesar, who writes, so I was listening to a recent episode in which Kirk mentioned a moment in his life in which he was smoking a lot of weed. I guess I'm in that moment of my life right now, and thus the interest, but I swear I'll try to make this question video game related. I was wondering, what has your relationship with weed been like through time? Have all 3 of you smoked it? And how did the changes in the legal scenario impact that relationship for you in the United States? I have a vague grasp of how it works in the US, and I know things aren't the same in all states, but I was curious how that has been for the 3 of you. I'm aware it's a personal question. It's okay if you don't want to get into it. My video game question is, what are the best games to play while stoned? He mentions a few that he likes, but he wants to know what we think. So for starters, I mean, I don't know, we have all smoked weed in our lives, right?
What?
Safe to say. I know, scandalous.
Kirk, how dare you say this?
So I'll go first, I guess.
It's also legal in all 3 of our respective states, I guess we should say.
Yeah, but I mean, I was smoking weed when it was still illegal. It's 20 years ago.
I was trying to cover for us, man.
Oh, I see.
It's hard to imagine a jazz musician smoking weed, but
yeah,
I know,
a jazz cigarette.
Yeah, living in San Francisco and playing jazz saxophone. Yeah, it was everywhere. I find, just personally speaking, I find that I don't love playing video games while after smoking weed. I don't really smoke that much anymore. It's just something that I've fallen off of over the years. I think that's common for a lot of people. It takes too much out of me. I become incredibly unproductive. I don't feel great for a while afterward. It just sort of it actually saps a lot of experiences of their specialness, I find. It used to be when I was younger, you would go see a movie or something, or a concert, and it would be like, wow, like it would seem really cool, because I've always found that weed kind of puts me very in the moment. And so I'm able to just like not think about other stuff and just focus on the music or the game or the movie or whatever it is. And that can be a really cool experience. But over time, that has kind of diminished for me. And there are definitely downsides for me as well. And I actually find with games that my attention just wanders. Like I don't really stick with a game for a very long time, and I'll think, oh, this will be cool because this game's really beautiful looking or whatever. And then I'll play for half an hour and then be like, I want to go do something else. Where these days, because I very rarely, well, I guess not smoke, but consume edibles, just because since it's legal, it's so easy to get edibles. But I just very rarely get high anymore. And that's a change for me since when I was younger. It just kind of affects me differently than it used to. Now, I mean, I prefer to play games just totally sober. I'll just, play a video game and I'll find, I can like really focus and just play this for 3 hours and it's really fun. This would not be enhanced in any way by marijuana. So that's my experience. And those are some thoughts from me.
Yeah, I don't fully agree, but I guess it's because I don't have the same relationship to it that you two might.
Well, that's important to say that it affects everybody differently.
I'm also a different human being than you two. I don't know if the listeners are aware of that. Each of us are different people with different experiences in life. Anyway,
do you have a second source on that?
No, I can't actually confirm that. You'll just have to take my word. I actually never smoked weed until I was in my mid-30s, which is maybe wild to confess, but if you put it together with the fact that I've been diagnosed with multiple mental illnesses, it makes a little more sense. And I was really worried growing up. I mean, it was also not legal, but I was very concerned in my teenage years and 20s while I was like, trying different cocktails of psychiatric drugs, that taking anything else could impact that. And so I was just super careful about my mental health in that era. And not like now, but you guys know what I'm saying. I was like really nervous about it. And so when I finally tried it, it was partially because I was like, I feel like I'm in a really good place and like this isn't going to destroy my life. And I would say that's still true. I'm a very infrequent user of it, but there's certainly strains I like. And I know what you mean, Kirk, but like I'm more of an edibles person, but I've found some that, for me at least, make playing a video game a little more fun, not from a focused perspective, but from a meditative state perspective. Like sometimes not necessarily a difficult game, but like a game that just requires a certain level of flow state can be fun if I'm also on a certain strain, but it's just not always the place that I want to be in mentally. It's fun sometimes, but not all the time. I also recall describing Bloodborne as being really fun if you've had exactly one beer, just enough that you don't give a crap anymore. And I feel like there's certain kinds of edibles that give me a similar experience, especially if I'm like really struggling and frustrated. And I'm like, I just need to relax a tiny bit, then it can be useful for that. But yeah, I didn't like grow up smoking it or like have a long relationship with it. It's a newer thing in my life.
I'm trying to imagine Maddie Myers at like 35 smoking weed for the first time, and your reaction to that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's like funny to imagine like the first time I got high. I did it completely alone, which is probably weird, but I was like, I just don't want anyone to be here while I do this.
Smart,
and I did it like super medically, and I was like,
nice.
I'm just going to sit here and see what happens. Like just the biggest dork in the universe. But that's how I wanted to do it.
Did you feel it? I feel like the first time I smoked, I didn't even feel
People always
anything.
say that you don't, but I definitely did. Or I was imagining it. We'll never know.
So, yeah, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I wanted to get some. I don't smoke a lot. I have small children. It's not conducive to doing drugs. I haven't smoked a lot in a long time anyway. But I wanted to get some for a trip. And so I went to the store that's like 5 minutes away from my house, because there's weed stores
they're
in
everywhere
New York now. It's crazy. And I walk in and it's like this like high-tech room that feels like an Apple store, and you go and you order on an iPad.
Really do.
And it's crazy. When I was in college, I smoked a lot in college at NYU, and we used to order by calling up a guy who went by the name Shrek, and he would come to our apartment. with an ounce, and it's cheaper now than it was then, which is crazy. I mean, talk about capitalism and inflation, right? But so gone are the days of like Shrek showing up with a couple bags.
Shrek overcharging you for weed.
Yeah. It's so wild. But anyway, my relationship with weed, we smoked ourselves to like stupidity every single night back in the college days, and played Guitar Hero 2 and Smash Brothers on N64, and so I associate those games with smoking. If to answer the question here, those were some of my favorite to play while stoned. But nowadays it's like maybe once a year when I'm like kind of on a trip with some friends or something like that.
Special occasions only.
Yeah, exactly. But like I was never the type to be like, all right, I'm gonna light up a joint and just like play some games at my computer, largely because I often will just forget what happened afterwards. And so I feel like I have a very, very specific memory, which is watching, I think my wife and I smoked once like 7 years ago. This is how you can tell that I never do it anymore, that I'm remembering this one story from 7 years ago. But it was when HBO's Watchmen was on, and we watched the first 2 episodes.
Oh, you can't watch that high.
And I was like, I didn't know if I had made it up, because the second episode of Watchmen, like fish are falling from the sky, or squids are falling from the sky.
That would be like terrifying to try to
and
watch
like
high.
The lube dude like jumps under the vent, and I was like just thinking to myself, especially afterwards, I was like, did I just make all that up? Like, did that just really happen? And so playing games and then just like trying to remember them afterwards, I don't know. I think for the three of us, something else that we haven't talked about or that we haven't considered here is that like playing games, it's fun, but it's also part of our jobs. And so we have to be able to talk about our experiences in a kind of a lucid way. And so this idea of just like, all right, I'm just going to smoke and play Red Dead Redemption 2 or something doesn't really mesh with us then having to talk about that game on a podcast or write about that game in a coherent way or interview the developers of it. I don't think the two really go well together. Maybe there's some people who function like that and are bigger potheads, but for me it's more like those were my older days. Those were my early 20s / late teens days of like being able to smoke all the time, and now it's just like a once in a while thing for me and not something that I do while playing games really.
Yeah, that's a great point about our jobs.
It makes me think of 2 things. First of all, one is that actually, when I was younger, I mean, I certainly smoked more weed and would forget games, but I kind of liked it because I liked replaying games, and I would remember some of it, but then I'd replay it and it would be kind of like a new experience.
That's kind of endearing. Saving a lot of money. Not on weed, but on
say
games.
like, I wish I could forget Obra Dinn and then play it again. It's like, well,
did you play it really high?
That also makes me think of, I have a very similar relationship with music where, a lot of the weed I encountered in San Francisco and when I was a gigging musician was just with other players. I first smoked in music school with other jazz musicians, and it's very conducive to a kind of loose openness that allows for improvisation. There's definitely a reason that music and weed are so closely intertwined. Like the two things go very well together. But I did find as a professional musician that it was a similar thing where it's fun if you're just jamming and messing around and you kind of want to loosen up and let yourself just go on flights of fancy. But if you're actually on a gig, if you're working or you need to really kind of get it done, for me at least, it's not the thing. And again, everyone is different. I've definitely known people who are much more functional or who actually, work better after smoking. So it really just sort of varies depending on the person.
Yeah, I've seen that too. And like as a person with an ADHD diagnosis, it doesn't have this effect for me, but I certainly know people who are like, it helps make me more focused. And I'm like, power to you. Like if it's something that is actually helping you, great. And there are many other benefits to it. For pain. We don't need to lecture everybody about all the other medical benefits, but it's actually a really great thing in my view that legalization is finally happening. It never should have been as criminalized as it was, and it's largely harmless in a lot of ways, and like a lot of the things that I believed about it as a kid turned out not to be true. So that's been kind of a relief to 30-something Maddy to like see it get legalized more and also studied more, and for more people to be like, oh, this is actually something that really helps me with chronic pain or focus or anxiety or whatever other thing it just so happens to hit for you on.
Cool. Let's slip in one last question. Maddy, read this one.
Sure. This one is from Parker, who writes, "My 9-year-old has gotten into listening to the pod on the way to and from school, and he wanted me to send this burning question after listening to the most recent questions episode. Do you think everyone is excited for Mario Kart World because there are 24 racers now, or because of the open world map?" And again, that's from Beckett, who's 9. Great question.
Those
Great
are our two
question,
options.
Beckett.
Those are the only 2 options, right?
This is a leading question, Beckett. We're going to have to explain to you what a leading question
is. Right, because
Objection,
there
Your
could
Honor.
actually be other things that people are excited for. I do feel like Beckett is getting at some of the tension of what's exciting about Mario Kart World, though, which is like the single player experience versus the competitive experience, though, right? Like those are kind of 2 different reasons why somebody might play Mario Kart.
Well, yes, and it's also a leading question on a more fundamental level, which is that it begins, do you think everyone is excited for Mario Kart World? Which I'm not sure that everyone
That's true.
is.
What do you mean? Everyone is.
Okay, I'm just going to answer Beckett's question. It's because of the 24 racers, okay? That's the answer.
That's it. Yeah, that's the
Straightforward,
answer.
straight, nice and simple.
Well, I disagree. I think it's the open world map.
Beckett, thank you so much for listening to our show.
Yeah, man.
thank
Thanks so
you.
much.
All right, kiddos, let's take a break and then we'll be back for one more thing. Once again, thank you to everyone who sent in questions. We will be right back.
Do you want to travel this summer but don't have the time?
Want to learn all about state mottos and history without summer school?
Or maybe you just love urban legends and Latin?
Well, my friends, there's one podcast that ties it all together and celebrates the American states many call home, E Pluribus Motto.
Every episode, we showcase a different state or commonwealth or district or territory and celebrate its official motto and the absurdity of all its local life.
We'll go across the country with stops at Oregon, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and so many more. Join us, won't you, to take in the sights and sounds.
New episodes of E Pluribus Motto every other week on Maximum Fun.
What's more action-packed than prestige television?
With more continuity than comic books?
And more reality than reality television?
It's professional wrestling! And to better understand wrestling is the ultimate form of entertainment. You need the Tights and Fights podcast.
This is the perfect wrestling show with a lot of love, a lack of toxic masculinity,
And just the right amount of butts, cats, and spandex.
Listen to Tights and Fights every Saturday on Maximum Fun.
And we are back. Kirk, Maddy, it is time for one more thing. I'm going to go first. I got a game that I can't stop playing, you guys. I'm so excited to talk about this game. My one more thing is Fantasy Life I: The Girl Who Steals Time. The sequel to Fantasy Life I.
Yes.
As
I've
one
heard
does.
all about it.
Yeah.
So this is a game that I think might be best described as a cross between Zelda and Animal Crossing. And it's hard to kind of encapsulate it all in a pithy description, but I will do my best. This is a game where there are a lot of different components. The main premise is that you, as this kind of create your own character, a little chibi cartoonish character sprite, get to inhabit one of 15 lives, and a life is essentially like a job or a class within this game. And so it could be anything from a fighter life, like paladin and mercenary and hunter, to a crafting life like blacksmith and tailor, to a gathering life like lumberjack, woodcutter, and miner and stuff like that. And each of these lives, you have like a skill tree and quests and a whole kind of life to play out. So when you're fighting, you'll be leveling up and doing quests for your like one of your fighting classes. And then if you see a tree while you're out in the world, you can go and chop it down, doing a little tree chopping mini game. And then if you get back to a workbench, you can craft some armor using your blacksmithing mini game. And these mini games are essentially just like pressing buttons at the right time, and a little bit more involved than that, but very simple, kind of lo-fi stuff. Then on top of that, you have all these other aspects of the game. So there's a story, and the story mostly involves hopping back and forth through time while you just like go on various quests to find MacGuffins and like help solve people's problems through these kind of like action RPG overworlds and dungeons is kind of where the Zelda comes into it. Then there's also a town building aspect to it where you can go back to your base and you can build up an entire town full of people. You can collect buddies over the course of the game who you bring into your town, and you can do quests for them, and you can build them houses, and you can plant farms, and you can build furniture and deck out your house and expand your house and all that other kind of good Animal Crossing stuff. And then on top of all that, there is this massive open world where you go around and you solve shrines and unlock maps through towers and fight monsters and solve mini games and look for like I think they're called leafies, which is this game's equivalent to Karex, which are buried in the ground, and you explore this massive open world that is almost entirely optional. And so you playing this game just kind of like navigate between these things. And this game is basically about watching numbers go up. It's a game about grinding. It's a game about like the satisfaction of fulfilling like little accomplishments, which usually, I mean, it's a high barrier for me to get into one of those games. It's very much like a cozy game. That's how I would best describe it. But this one, for some reason, it's really clicked with me and I've become addicted to it. I've been playing it just nonstop over the last couple of weeks. It is the perfect game to play on your handheld device while watching TV. There is nothing better than like zoning out. My wife and I have been watching some shows over the last couple of weeks. I think one of our shows might be my next One More Thing, or will be a future One More Thing. But we've been watching some shows, and there's nothing better than just like doing menial tasks in Fantasy Life I, and just kind of watching your bars go up and getting in that satisfying loop of like going out and chopping down wood and finding the best trees and successfully chopping them, and then bringing back that lumber to then make stuff at the workbench, and then using it to fight monsters that are stronger than you, and going through that whole loop while doing other things. It is perfect for playing while doing other things. I don't know if I would enjoy it quite as much if I was just like only had to focus on Fantasy Life, but to have something to do, just like to watch the numbers go up and watch the bars get filled while you're watching TV or sports or whatever, just superb, impeccable.
I have one question. The classes are all happening simultaneously? So is it just like you fight something and you get fighter points, you cut down a tree, you get tree chopper points?
So good question. Okay, so no. So for the fighting part of it, you have to balance your kind of fighting classes. So whatever fighting class you're doing, you will get experience for that class.
So is it like you equip a class? Like you go into a pause menu and then you choose that class and it becomes active for you?
Well, for those, so hear me out. So for the fighting classes, that's the one kind of where you have to equip the right one for the combat encounter, because whatever you have is kind of like equipped, that's what you will get into while fighting, and that's where all the experience will go, and that's where you'll like fulfill the quest requirements and whatnot. So and I should say, so there's like levels, and then there's also your kind of your quests that you have to fulfill to rank up your life, and those are two different meters that you're worried about. So one is like you're leveling up to level 20, level 30, level 40, et cetera, et cetera. The other one is, okay, I want to get my paladin life from fledgling to apprentice to adept to expert.
So your level is sort of outside of your life, which are basically your subclasses.
No. The levels are also per each life. It's just that each life has two of those meters that you're filling up. Lots of meters to fill up in this game.
Oh, okay.
But that's the upside, is the meters, you see.
Right. Exactly. We like to watch them fill.
We watch those numbers go up. So when you're fighting, you can only use one of those classes, one of the fighting classes. But then if you're out in the world and you see a tree, you go up to the tree, you'll switch to woodcutter automatically. You see some ore, you'll switch to mining. You see a fish, you can switch to fishing automatically. And then when you're at the workbench, you can just choose whichever like job you want to do from the menu. Like you have access to all these hundreds of recipes that you've accumulated, and some of them will be for each class, and it'll be like you are now doing the cook, you are now doing the tailor, you are now doing the alchemist, whatever it is. So it's all very seamless. The UI is pretty smart, and it all is good. It's all streamlined and makes sense, and you can fast travel like to workbenches, or like to the kind of the expert assigned to each of these lives, where you can go and turn in your quests and level up and stuff like that. And yeah, man, it's very addictive. It's very charming game, very fun game. There's a whole story, and the story is kind of like whatever, but it's just fun to watch unfold and charming and cutesy, and the art is very cool and fun and cartoony. And the fact, I mean, just to put this in perspective, by the way, the scale of this game, this would feel like a complete, like, satisfying game even without this section ginormousia, I think it's called, which is like, that's the Breath of the Wild section. And then so on top of this like fully fledged game, you have a whole 100-hour open world that you could just wander around and explore for like endless amounts of time. So this is a sprawling game. This is not for the faint of heart. This is not a game for like people who are like, I just want a game to play for 1 hour a night and have a satisfying experience with it. This is a game for you're watching a lot of TV with your partner and you want something to do while watching. You like multitasking and you want to play something while watching TV. You're listening to podcasts or something. The perfect podcast game. You listen to Triple Click every week. You want a game to play during it. Fantasy Life I is the way to go. Yeah, I'm hooked.
It's like a whole genre of game. I completely understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, I was going to say, Maddy, it seems very much, since you were so into Fields of Mystria, I feel like you would be into this.
Oh, yeah. It seems like I would like it, and also like my wife would like it too, because we both play games in the exact way you're describing.
Yep. And I think that I think that a lot of these farming games don't have the combat component. The combat component, at least for me, helps me get more into it than just like a Stardew Valley or an Animal Crossing.
There's a little bit of that in Fields of Mystery, which is part of what I liked about it, but it's not a lot. This sounds like it has way more, and that would be fun.
I think you will really enjoy it, and I think Tina will too. All right, Maddy, what's your one more thing?
Well, it's very related because this is an object that has entered my household that has made it even easier to play games with a handheld device on the couch, which is an activity that Dean and I do all the time. And you know what? The Steam Deck's kind of heavy. I'll say it. You're holding it up in your hands for a while. Maybe you're not sitting very ergonomically. Maybe over time you're like, why does my entire body hurt? And it's because you've been sitting in a stupid position watching television and playing your Steam Deck for several hours. And there is this gaming pillow that Dina and I now both have. We both have this. She bought these this week, and it is life-changing. I'm already recommending it because so it's like this little beanbag.
This is not a sponsored segment, by the way.
Not a sponsor. If you go
I've
get
wanted one of
these
these forever. I think I saw one of these on Reset Era, and I was like, oh, I can see how great that would be. So I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah. So like, here's how it works. It's by this company called Mechanism that is actually based in Portland, Oregon. It's just two people. I kind of wanted to shout them out because they seem like a cute little company.
They should come to our live show.
Yeah, they should come to our live show if they're listening. For all we know, they are. But there are many, many other gaming pillows online, and I've considered buying them for like a year and a half because of this problem that we both have had. And eventually Dina took the plunge, did the research, got us both one of these. So it's basically like a little spherical beanbag that is like, I don't know, it's the size of a bread box. And you can just put that little beanbag in your lap, and now that would be enough on its own. You could just kind of rest the Steam Deck or whatever you're using on the beanbag. You're already in an ergonomically better position. You could just do this with a regular pillow and you'd be better off, honestly. But what this pillow has is this kind of hinged piece of plastic that is like a lever that's kind of like the monitor arms that I have installed, where I can like adjust the height of my monitor, and that's attached to the top of the beanbag, which is kind of like flat, almost like those beanbag TV trays, if you ever had one of those that you'd like put in your lap. And that hinged kind of lever you can put your Steam Deck on, and it comes with a variety of attachments. They don't have a Switch 2 attachment yet, sadly. I'm gonna get one when they do, but they have other ones. So if you wanted to, you could put your phone, you could play with the Switch 2 mouse on this thing if you wanted to. And they also, you can just put a controller on there if you want. Like if you're just tired of like holding up a controller, or you have one that's particularly heavy, you can use it for that. And it's just great. And also you can really sit in a variety of positions with this pillow because it's not that big, and because it's a beanbag, it's pretty malleable. So you can like sit cross-legged or like sit with one leg up on the coffee table or whatever. And it's been amazing. I can already tell that I'm helping my neck and possibly not going to destroy my poor body by gaming, by using this freaking gaming pillow.
I've thought about getting one of these for a while because I totally get the thing where my pinkies start to fall asleep if I hold the controller.
Yep, it's the back of your hands that are the problem because they're holding
it's
up all
nerve.
the way.
Well, there's that nerve that runs up your arm. I'm looking at the video, or I'm looking at their website, and there are some very funny videos. I have to think this might be the founder in these videos. There's one where he's just smashing himself in the face with it, and then he looks at the camera like, video. Whoa, like it's very soft. And then he's got his phone mounted under the Steam Deck with a YouTube playthrough, like
that's a little much
something.
for me. But you could do like your phone and the Steam Deck all in the same thing. Yeah.
No, I'm saying that. I think that's a really smart use. You can put your phone right there and like hit the walkthrough, like if you're trying to solve a puzzle or something. There have totally been times, I remember when I was playing Destiny, where I would be trying to get to some weird thing to unlock some item, and I'd have to watch some tutorial, and it'd be very nice to have the screens right next to each other. So anyway, it seems like
it's so luxurious.
The ultimate multitasking would be to have your Steam Deck and then your phone under it, and then also the TV on in the background.
Well, that's basically how Dina and I are living our lives. It is an absurd. It's an absurd way to live my life. I feel like I'm admitting to something forbidden by even acknowledging that we purchased gaming pillows. Like, it doesn't even sound real. It's so silly. But you know what? It's really helping my body not get...
Yeah, man, ergonomics. The ergonomics are worth it.
Messed up from a dumb thing I was doing. So if it helps any of the listeners... Great. Get a gaming pillow. It doesn't have to be from Mechanism. That's the company where we got ours. It, again, not sponsored. We purchased these with our own money, but just use a pillow. Don't screw yourself up.
Kirk, what's your one more thing?
My one more thing is a book that I finished a couple of weeks ago that I really loved that I wanted to shout out. It is called Birnam Wood. It came out in 2023. It's published by the New Zealander author Eleanor Catton. This is an awesome book that I'm not going to say too much about because one of the really cool things about it is how it kind of morphs and changes over the course of reading it. I describe it as a kind of a personal drama / thriller. It's a book that begins one way and then changes in a very sort of abrupt but also surprising way over the course of it. The basic narrative setup is it is about a group of activists who live in or around Christchurch in New Zealand. They're called Birnam Wood, which of course is a Macbeth reference. And they're kind of like a guerrilla gardening collective. So they're a bunch of young people. They're in their 20s. They're kind of like a mix of different types where they all got out of school and they wanted to do something to change the world, like to be an activist, to like help make the world better. And they all kind of came together around this idea of unused space and, you know, a kind of green revolution where if we can just plant more crops and plants and all of this land that's just sort of sitting untended, we could have so much more food. We could use the land so much more responsibly. So it's this kind of loose mix of a bunch of different types of people, you know, hardcore anarchists or people who are kind of more establishment or want to turn Birnam Wood into a real nonprofit that can, you know, become financially sustainable, and like people who totally don't want that at all. And that's kind of where things start. And then over the course of the first couple of chapters, the two kind of main characters are two women named Mira and Shelley. Mira, kind of the charismatic leader of Birnam Wood, and Shelley, the one who makes it all work, but is also kind of always seen as the follower. She's always been sort of in Mira's shadow a little bit. Mira is very much the dazzling leader. And the two of them are kind of at this really interesting point in their relationship where Shelley's thinking of leaving Birnam Wood and Mira is like kind of lost in her own deceptions and sort of not, I don't know. The characters are very, very well drawn in this story. So they are at this very interesting place, and Birnam Wood is kind of on the precipice and maybe is even going to stop working. And then they come across this billionaire, and the billionaire has turned up at a sort of a farm that's like maybe 3 hours out of Christchurch. It's in a place called Thorndyke. And he is in the process of, he says, buying this farm so that he can build one of those billionaire bunkers, like these billionaires like to build, where they can ride out the end of the world. So he's doing this like hush-hush deal to buy the land, and he's going to build this bunker. The truth is more complicated than that, and it's very quickly revealed that there's something much more nefarious going on than just that. But basically, this activist organization comes into the orbit of this billionaire, and these two women and then their friend Tony, who's the kind of the final character, is are all just sort of bouncing around in this increasingly volatile situation, revolving around this farm outside of Thorndyke as this billionaire, is working his machinations, and Birnam Wood is kind of getting in increasingly over its head. And I won't say any more than that, but to just recommend the book itself, I think Catton is a really amazing writer. I haven't read a book quite like this in a while, where she is so merciless with her characters and yet also so understanding of them. I read a review of this where they described her as holding her characters up to the light to alternately illuminate and roast them, which I think is perfect. There are so many times where characters just feel completely believable. At 1 minute, they'll just be ranting about the state of things and climate change and billionaires and, selling out and the path to progress and how radical we really need to be to bring about change. And then the next minute, they'll just be having like the most venal, self-interested thoughts. And she is just totally fearless about really revealing things that they don't even realize about themselves. Like she takes this omniscient view into her characters that goes deeper than most books that I have read, or certainly books that I've read recently. And that makes for, I think, a really engrossing read. And then as things begin to spiral out of control, it also becomes quite scary because the characters feel so believable. You can really see yourself having some of the thoughts that they have in the more intense moments in the book. And then you start to feel like you're really kind of there in a way that feels both dreamlike and surreal, but also very real and frightening. So it's just a book with layers. It's really something else. And I really recommend reading the whole thing. You got to read the whole thing to get the full idea of it. But I wholeheartedly recommend it. I had a great time reading it. One of the most surprising and interesting books I've read in a while. So that is called Birnam Wood. It's by Eleanor Catton. A great book.
Great pitch.
Yeah, this was on a lot of lists when it came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it won a ton of awards.
Very, very much acclaimed. Cool, awesome. Alrighty, that is that for this week's episode. Kirk, Maddy, I'll see you both real soon, and hopefully we'll see many of you listeners out there, at least a few hundred. We're expecting to see on Friday night, and it should be fun. For the rest of you, we'll see you next week with our live show audio, and then we forgot to say we're taking a break the week after that, so we'll be back with our next non-live episode at the end of July.
Yeah, I will see both of you on stage.
Woo!
See Friday.
Bye.
Triple Click is produced by Jason Schreier, Maddy Myers, and me, Kirk Hamilton. I edit and mix the show and also wrote our theme music. Our show art is by Tom DJ. Some of the games and products we talked about on this episode may have been sent to us for free for review consideration. You can find a link to our ethics policy in the show notes. Triple Click is a proud member of the Maximum Fun Podcast Network, and if you like our show, we hope you'll consider supporting us by becoming a member at MaximumFun.org/join. Find us on Twitter at TripleClickPod, send email to tripleclick@MaximumFun.org, and find a link to our Discord in the show notes. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
Supported
directly
by you.